I can't say it often enough or too many times of don't talk to the police, don't talk to the state, except for in some particular circumstances or where you absolutely have to. And increasingly, as our surveillance state and society advances, that also means be very careful of what you say or whether you choose to speak to people who you wouldn't traditionally consider someone working for the state. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So, it's called Don't Talk TV because my motto is don't talk to the police and don't talk to other people who work for the state unless you have to. Of course, it always depends on the particular circumstances, but certainly don't talk to the police. Absolutely don't talk to them if you're being investigated. But in 2022, we have to be aware of the fact that there's ever more surveillance, ever more ability for surveillance, and privacy is quickly dwindling. The right to privacy is like everything else. You either use it or lose it. And unfortunately, people have been fairly casual about their right to privacy. They've been giving up the right to privacy either directly or indirectly over the years. So I want to talk about a couple areas to keep in mind. One of them came up today just while I was reviewing some disclosure on a file. It reminded me of this, is the fact that patient-doctor privilege doesn't really exist anymore. Unlike lawyers and maybe some clergy, physicians seem to have very little compunction about sharing your most intimate details with the state. Now, in fairness to them, they probably don't have a choice. I'm not a medical doctor. I haven't read through all the regulations that guide members of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, but it seems that they actually have a lot of rules where they have no choice, but they're required to report to the state when they've been told certain things about you. So, two that come to mind immediately is firstly, if there's any kind of dispute in the family, the sort of thing that might be called, quote, domestic violence, unquote, disciplining your children physically, although technically legal, that's the sort of thing that your medical doctor will report to CAS or the police if you ever report that to them, or any sort of violence between spouses. Also, think very carefully before you tell your doctor that you're feeling depressed, especially if you're a firearms owner. Being depressed, especially with some of the new laws in the works, we've talked about C-21 previously, once that's law, you could very well lose your firearms license in the blink of an eye just from telling your physician that you're feeling depressed. It's a very terrible situation because people may miss out on treatment that they need, but it's something that you need to be aware of and be careful of how you disclose these things to a physician. Really keep in mind that the walls really do have ears when you're ever seeing your doctor for a checkup or any other sort of discussion, and that anything you say could be reported to CAS or the police. Now that leads me into my second point, the police and how often are they listening, and what I was saying about us progressively giving up our right to privacy. In the novel 1984, everyone was required to have a telescreen in every room of their house, I believe, that constantly pumped out propaganda and also monitored, listened in on the discussions and what people are doing. Well, we have a modern day telescreen. Mine actually looks kind of like a book, but smartphones. These are really the modern day telescreen, and we're not forced to carry them, but we voluntarily carry them. We pay to carry them around, and they're very useful. I mean, obviously I have one, so I'm not saying don't have a smartphone at all, but keep in mind, the saying, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword, and keep in mind the dangers as well as the benefits of a smartphone. So this really hit home with an article I saw recently about some documents that the RCMP provided to the House of Commons. So I've got this article here from the Vision Times open. Of course, mainstream media wouldn't touch this story with a 10-foot pole, so I've had to go to so-called alternate media. But if you're really interested in this, I mean, it was presented to the House of Commons, so you can find it in the Hansard. But the article is titled, RCMP Deploys Spyware That Enables Mics, Cameras to Eavesdrop on Targets, Agency Admits. And this is from June 29th of 2022. Let's just look here quickly. It just says, Canada's federal police force, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, has admitted it utilizes spyware that enables the microphones and cameras on devices to spy on targets it wishes to investigate. So in these documents they gave to the House of Commons, RCMP outlined the techniques its covert access and intercept team employs in a document provided to the House of Commons during the week of June 27 in response to a question from an unnamed Conservative Party MP on how the agency gathers data from Canadians. So it says, the document further defined the tools as spyware, quote, installed on a target computing device that enables the collection of electronic evidence, unquote, and further elaborated that the spyware collects, quote, audio recordings of private communications and other sounds within range, and photographic images of persons, places, and activities viewable by the camera built into it, the targeted device, unquote. So in other words, the RCMP can turn on the microphone of your smartphone and listen in to everything that's within range of the microphone, and turn on the camera to see what your camera is looking at. Sure, they can do the same with laptops as well. This shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, Edward Snowden, I don't know how many years ago that was, over 10 years ago, he revealed that the NSA was doing that in the United States. So it's no surprise that the RCMP can do this, and they are doing it. I don't think we'll ever know the full extent to which they're doing this and who they're targeting, but one might ask, well, how are they going to deploy this spyware onto phones? Well, they're sure not telling criminals, hey, I'm installing spyware on your phone. This is done surreptitiously, so it can be done equally to a suspected criminal as to any one of us. And nowadays, what's a suspected criminal? When our national flag is illegal on Parliament Hill on Canada Day, that really changes the perception of what a potential criminal is. So, again, these are things to keep in mind. I've talked about this in previous episodes. I'll put the links in the show description to have a look at those where I talked about some solutions. I'm a big fan of Faraday bags. I use a Faraday bag very frequently. Obviously, I need my phone on a fair bit for work so that I can get emergency calls, but there's definitely a lot of scenarios where I will keep it in that. And if you're ever having a conversation that you wouldn't want the state to have recording of, I highly recommend that you consider putting all phones that are within range into a Faraday bag. So this video isn't legal advice. If you need legal advice, contact a lawyer. You can call another lawyer or myself. My phone number and my website are listed below. If there's any show topics you'd like to see me cover, please send us a recommendation or request. You can send an email to the email address listed below, or you can leave a comment in the comments section. If you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.